and I'm about to cut some meat up for a grind. I've got my cutting board, got my anti-slip, cabinet liner material, white distilled vinegar, and paper towels. And additionally, bowl, and I've got a tub that I'll put meat in as well. I'll get that out, and then I'm going to go and grab the meat, which is in the cooler right outside. I always move it to right outside the door so I can go and just grab meat, bring them in as I'm done. The meat lug will go into the refrigerator. There's a drip pan in the bottom, so blood doesn't saturate the meat. It's sitting above the blood, and that'll keep it nice and cool until I'm ready to do the grind. If that's a day or a couple hours, doesn't matter. So I'm going to get those items and I'll be right back. Okay. Meat lug. Drain pan. All the meat will go in there. This goes in the refrigerator. And go ahead and grab take my vinegar. Pour this bowl here. So I'm going to do like here. I'm going to go ahead and rinse this off to try to get as much of this hair off as I can. There's not very much hair, little bits of grass. Cold water, of course. Of course, the best thing that you could do is try to have good hygiene on the front end of putting this meat up. That's key. Okay, so we're going to lay this here and take our paper towel. Wipe this down real good. It's going to disinfect the surface before we go cutting into it. It's not going to leave any residual taste or smell of vinegar. So, no worries there. Now, since I laid this down on the cutting board, I will wipe that cutting board surface down before flipping this. Very nice. So now that our surface is clean, I will put some gloves on. Make sure my hands are pretty dry. Putting gloves on with wet hands is not fun. Okay. So when I first do this, it's a little further back than I normally do. I usually slide it up to me, but in order to have this in frame, this is the way I've got to do it, so it shouldn't be an issue. So my goal here is to cut this up as, I take this with a grain of salt, as quickly as possible, because I want to maintain the temperature on this meat. So, obviously I want to be safe, but I am trying to somewhat hurry up. So I think that just comes with time. The first thing is safety. Don't want to obviously cut yourself. So, be careful. I'm just trying to break this thing down. You can follow those seams that you saw there, the little fat lines. And try to turn this so you can see it. And just come in here and separate these muscles. Set that aside. This one. It really doesn't matter, since we're doing this for burger or sausage, how this looks. If we cut into the face of the muscle or anything like that, it's not a big deal. But if you were cutting these up for roasts, you would obviously want to be mindful of that. Kind of nice and tight to the bone there. I just don't like these glands. I'm going to go and take that one off. So, I've worked on this process for some time, and I have found that inevitably you'll get better and more efficient with time. But only recently did I make probably the best improvement to my process. I got a new grinder. Recycling the old grinder down to it's now going to be used for making dog food and possibly baits for trapping. And I used the new grinder last night for some meat for us, and we had some burgers tonight, and the end product, I think, is pretty good. It does a better job of grinding, and anyway, it's your sign to go ahead and invest in that meat grinder if you've been considering it. And then the lower part of the leg, which is called the shank, is got a lot of sinew in it. There's actually this upper shank is kind of, you can lump that in the same category. This is essentially like your forearm. It's just got a lot of sinew, connective tissue. It's pretty hard to separate out. Well, let's not say hard. It's just time consuming, more time consuming than the larger muscle groups. So this will go into a pile for ground for the dog. So like I mentioned, I use my old meat grinder for doing dog food. So as we're doing these, we just bag these up, and then they will be ran through the grind on probably tomorrow for dog food. So we'll separate these off the bone. So literally, whereas when I first started this, the amount of waste was minimal. So I thought I had a lot of trimming that I really didn't do anything with. Sometimes I'd take it and put it in the compost. Other times I would, just throw it out. And the dog food really supplements my regular dog food for him. It minimizes the amount of money I'm putting into dog food each month, and it also gives him some really good meat. So yeah, that's what that's for. So all of this will be dog food. This will be a bone the dog can chew on. All of that is going to be trimmed and ground into meat for human consumption. So what I usually do is just take trimmings for the dog, put in a plastic bag, because there's no human meat that I put in a plastic bag. Bone. Actually got 2 bones there, but I'll give them both at one time. And these can be used for a number of things. They can be used for a training track for the dog, and getting him trained up for tracking wounded game animals, which we do on a regular basis. We can go ahead and place both of these in the freezer, and we'll add to them as we go, and while maintaining that temperature. All right, start with this little puppy here. This is a pretty tender little. This is like the top part of the shoulder. I don't know what you would call it, but it's a pretty tender little cut. And really, like I said, time is the biggest thing here. We're not looking for perfection. We're just trying to get all of the white stuff off. So that's a combination of silver skin, wild game fat, connective tissue, you know, tendons, like I said, sinew, glands, fat. They all come in different consistencies, so you know, some of them you'll see they're like gooey, almost membranous layers on the exterior. Others you'll see are, you know, more fibrous, like cartilage almost. Others you'll see are like bacon grease that is solidified. And that's my experience on glands a lot of the time. You know, stuff like this. It's almost like a gland. They have kind of an odd smell to them, some of them, like the larger deer. Alright, so I've got connective tissue in the center of this. So what I'm going to do is come over here and almost fillet it like a fish. So that's not a big deal. I'm going to grab another bowl here. I'll go ahead and start throwing it in this meat lug. And, as soon as we get the meat lug in the fridge, which will be shortly, to get this meat cooled back down, then we'll be throwing this into a bowl and adding that bowl to the meat lug as we go. And in this case, where like I'm moving that little bit of meat, not going to be missed because it's just going to go right back into dog food. Put all that to dog food. Makes it easier to justify the little bit quicker cuts, a little more meat attached, because you know it's not going to be thrown away. It is going to go to use. It's going to create more dog food for you, so seemed like the perfect solution to me. Trim that up a little more. See, there's not a lot that you really miss. Going faster, it's just prettier, I guess. Trying to get the fastest ones done first, which is not going to be this, I think it's called ball. No, I don't know what that's called. Top round, bottom round. Sirloin, possibly? I don't know my cuts of meats too well. Well, the top round is, I know which one that is, for sure. It is one of the more tender mussels, and if cooked properly can be quite tasty. And I'm just chunking this into grinder size stuffable pieces. So about like that. Helps with blending this with the fat that we add. So I'm trying to get at least one side of this to be, you know, so we've got this here, so I can just fillet this out like a fish. You know. Around. That's on there. Is that top round roast? You can see the muscle fibers, or the grain pattern running down. When I cut into the face of the meat, which isn't good if we were going to be making a roast out of this. It's not the end of the world, but ideally you would want to you know, keep it nice and whole. So there's a seam that runs right there, right here. So that's a pretty small one for a deer. It's a pretty young deer. But they get quite large, you know. If you do this properly and put a good sear on it and then cook it low and slow, and on the small one like this, you could probably just cook it in a cast iron skillet. And then, you know, finish it off in the oven for a short period of time. It would be a fine steak. Okay, for this, we're not going to, we're going to, like I said, put it in grind. And look at these. I mean, that would be a beautiful steak. Little medallions. Cut them an inch thick. Look at that. That would rival backstrap. That's quite nice. and throw this into my alright. So we're going to go and separate. That's our dog food side. Some of this is just going to be real hard. See how that's just kind of all throughout? That's going to be quite hard to do. Quite time consuming, should I say, not hard. So rather than screwing around with that, I'll take the big stuff that's worth my time. The small stuff will let it go. What I've found is if there's fat somewhere, let's say like right here, can turn it to the corner and cut that whole side off instead of trying to fillet it if you can, if it's just one side. Here, boom. Okay, this muscle, let's just try to get right in here and get through that connective tissue. Open this right up like a book. Anything that has noticeable marbling of fat, like right there, immediately just go ahead, come in here and cut that right on out. Hey, there's some meat in there, but what you got mostly is garbage. Not garbage, it's dog food. Let's just say that. Not dog food, not garbage. It's garbage for human consumption. It's garbage for trying to be efficient with your time. Situation where I've got a line running here. I'm just going to come to the side of this line here, side of this line here, boom. Largest part, boom. And then, I don't know if it's cost effective to go on the other side because yeah, it's fine. Lay this right off. In this case, this little piece up top, I'm going to grab this little bit off right here. Silver skin here. See that? It's right underneath the surface. Not trying to be perfect because we can always come in here and fillet that right off. And so this little knob of a muscle here, Just going to cut that right off. Looks like we've got a little bit of silver skid in the center, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. Yeah, it is actually. We're going to have to take that out. Alright, so that runs down through the center of this, so we'll come on the top. That's not an issue. That's an issue. That's the real light. Really, really light stuff. So that real light stuff the grinder can handle. Obviously, if your knife's getting hung up on it, then you're going to want to take it out. But if it blows right through it going alongside, yeah, the grinder will incorporate that right in. Nobody will ever notice it. But obviously, you want to get as much as you can. I'm talking like 1/2 millimeter thick or less. You know, it's super, super small, thin layer. Something like that piece would get hung up on the blade, so that wouldn't be an issue. It's not the best work. Very good. So we're left with dog food and this. So we're able to get off that rear leg. Let's see. Good amount of meat. I'd guess probably 4 or 5 pounds off that rear. Both 10, 15. We'll probably get 15 to probably 15 pounds of ground off of this deer. It's not. I mean, again, very small deer, and probably 3 or 4 pounds of. 3 or 4 pounds of trimmings. Might get more than that. Might get 5 or 6 pounds of trimmings. Because that's probably 2 2 off the other leg, and then probably collectively 2 off of the fronts. 4 bones. And so probably 6 pounds of trimming. So that's probably 2. The bag once filled will probably be about 4 or 5 pounds. And then of course for the meat for human consumption, that's going to be mixed with about 1 pound of ground pork. So that'll add an extra pound. So we might get 16 pounds off of. Got our other small leg, rear leg, cold water. Cutting board. Give her a nice rub down. Alright, cutting board. Watch out for your knife. Yeah, so white distilled vinegar has have disinfecting properties. I'm not exactly sure what, but it helps to disinfect the meat, and I followed the guidance of other folks that I learned from on this. So, yep, that's where this comes from. Alright, quite nice. This one we've got a little bit more connective tissue right off the top. So take that one off. Oop. Sloppy. This is the second deer I've done this weekend. So, okay, so you can see there's a seam that runs right here. There's a seam that runs right here, so you get a muscle here, and there's also another seam that runs here, so you get a little muscle here, and a muscle here, muscle here, muscle here. This is that little point section I was talking about that's pretty tender, and then you got this back here as well, and then remember down here. So we're just going to get right into it, and it's deceiving the way that this runs. So you can, once you start to open it up, you can see I almost always screw up the seam. Yeah, so it actually runs back. The muscle kind of, it's round. It's a round ball, so I cut right into it. Like I said, I most of the time do that unless I'm being very, very careful, and in which case I'll probably separate a different one than this one. I'll probably come right up here and hit that one first. Seems to be a little bit more forgiving, at least for the way that my hands, in my mind, you know, kind of mentally breaks this down. Okay, so that's how I usually do it, though. I'll make a cut on either side of this little strip, and then from there you can kind of lift this strip up and separate it back. I try to leave more of the gland and connective tissue on this portion, and, you know, kind of cut nice and tight to this meat. You're always going to still have to do some trimming, but you know. So I believe this is bottom round. I believe this is, I don't know. I'm not a hard for me to say. Yeah, okay. So I think that's bottom round. I think this is called eye of round. And then yeah, and then this section here, which is actually on the outside, is a top round. And then this is the upper shank. It's got this little tendon that we hang the deer from. So this is the upper shank. The lower shank is down here. So upper shank, lower shank. This is your sirloin, and I think this is your point or cap or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I did look this up at one point. That was dangerous. Yeah, I've never cut meat for anyone. I've just you know, this has been something I've learned on my own. And there probably are better ways to do some of the things I'm doing, but I seem to be doing a fine job based on watching other people. Flip this over. Let's see. Now we can go right here off the ball of this bone down. That bone goes down this way. Let your knife ride right along that bone until it gets in here. And you can see that seam. Well, that seam is right there. Go right along that seam. And that comes off. And you can see the bone there where I rode my knife down. And then we'll take this ball off. Top side right along the bone. Right here behind the knee. And just fillet it right off the bone. Okay. That's it. Then we have our lower shank, which we talked about. Goes into dog food. You could also do like an ossobuco. I've heard folks doing that. I'm not even sure how to begin an ossobuco. I'd have to research that, but nonetheless, there are things that can be done if you didn't have a dog or just wanted to, you know, get as much meat for yourself as you could. A lot of these glands and high fat, I still throw away. It's just stuff like this, you know, it's going to leave a real waxy taste. You don't want the dog to, I don't know, it probably doesn't matter to most dogs, but try to make it as pleasant of an experience as possible. There's already connective tissue and things like that. Yep, so we're going to get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and put my bone up. All these bones could also be roasted, and once they're roasted, nice brown color, they could be transferred to a pot, stock pot. That can be, you can add vegetables and simmer that for some time, allowing that bone and all the meat attached to separate, all that goodness within the bones to leach into the water, and then remove the bones, strain it off, pour that broth into jars, and you can pressure can that, and you'll have shelf-stable broth for some good soups and things. Alright, we'll just go ahead and kick it off. This is a really, really tender piece. This little piece that sits right up on top of the shoulder. just tell when you're cutting it. Almost fork tender right off the deer. Not sure what this is, what this specific cut is called, but man, it's probably very delicious by itself. Just cut it right up into small pieces and pan fry it and add it to fried rice or something. Okay. Those are over there. And we'll go a little different path than we went last time. Like I said, all of this gland still goes in the trash. I don't even think that's really. If my dog was starving or something like that, obviously it'd be a different story. But it's not the case. By the way, you should never cut towards yourself. I do that. That's kind of sloppy on my part. I shouldn't, but I've just been doing it for so long. It's not really a thought. I'm very aware, you know, myself. I'm very aware of when I'm doing it, making sure that I'm not slashing back. You know, really just taking my time. You can almost separate some of those lines with your fingers. You know, rip that little piece right off. And there's your top round. This is probably one of the more delicious cuts of meat on a deer as far as just overall tenderness and